Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. This is the last in my review of the 4 figures in the Batman Returns wave from McFarlane Toys, and it is of course the Penguin. I'm not going to beat about the bush any further, let's just get straight into the review and kick off looking at the packaging. And if you've seen any of the other videos in this wave looking at these figures, you know what I'm going to say here. I do like that we have this sort of metallic text going down the side, the foil text they're saying Deluxe Theatrical Edition. Not quite sure why we have that. We've never had that before on any of the other movie figures, but I guess they're really trying to emphasize the importance of this particular film, because obviously it's a fan favorite and people have been waiting a very long time for this. Otherwise, it is the standard DC Multiverse packaging, so a lot of black borders, which is, it feels like a lot of wasted space in my opinion, but we do have the window display here where we can see the figure in all of its glory, which looks pretty fun. And then behind the figure, we have this interior card inlay, which is really quite nice and a bit different for this wave, or this line of figures, because we actually have some commissioned artwork here that kind of shows the Batmobile shedding its outer shell, so it goes into that more bullet form, and it's just in this background, the backdrop of Gotham City, which I think is kind of cool and very different, very unexpected. And I think that blue and the black kind of contrast nicely against the figure in the packaging, and it works really well for the overall presentation. So this is a really fun idea. Then if we look at the side panel, we have the Batman Returns logo, which looks really good. I think this looks really quite striking. It's just a shame we didn't actually have an image here of Danny DeVito's Penguin, either from the film or of the figure itself would have been fine. And then finally, we have the reverse the packaging, and of course it is the movie poster. And as I've said in other videos, I think this is a fantastic image. I think it's great that it's text free and it looks really displayable and it's a lot of fun. It just might have been fun to have different images, maybe different movie posters from around the world, or whatever they use in the promotional tour, just to differentiate the packaging between the various releases. Now, when it comes to the figure itself, I've got to be honest up front with you, I was a little bit disappointed. There's definitely some challenges with this release. But if we start off by looking at the head sculpt, I think they've done a pretty good job here of the likeness of Danny DeVito's Penguin. I think you can't really argue with it. The sculpting's pretty solid. They've gone for a quite manic expression on the face there, which works particularly well, I think. And I really love the use of paint apps, particularly the purple that they've used on the skin tones there, which is pretty much spot on to what we see in the film. And also in the hair as well, there's a lovely wash running through that to give it a lot of depth and texture, which is fantastic. So I think they've done a really nice job with the head sculpt. And likewise, to be fair, the actual sculpt of the body is good. I don't think we've ever had this before. I don't think they've recycled it. So I think this works really well. And again, there's actually lots of paint apps going on here, particularly in the torso and the cravat and on his waistcoat. There's actually different washes running through this to really just help this pop. And there's a lot of colour here, which is really fun. I think you desperately need it on a figure like this, which is quite grey and quite drab, really. So I think this is really nicely done. And I have to compliment them in terms of giving him the cloth cloak as well, the cloth coat. I think that works really well. Obviously, they have other cloaks that they can interchange, as we see with some of the other releases in this in this Batman Returns wave. But this is a nice touch, and I think if they give him a rubber coat here, this would make the figure really restrictive. So I like that we've got some material here and a different texture on the figure. I think this works quite well, but I think this might upset a lot of fans who feel it's a little bit at odds with the rest of the figure. Of course, he has very specific hands, those kind of flippers that he's got there. So again, they've been nicely sculpted. This is brand new tooling as far as I'm aware, and I think it's quite effective. There's not an awful lot to say about the legs. Obviously, there's no paint washes on these, and they're kind of just functional, really. But of course, they do seem to be new tooling, which is nice. My only criticism here really is about how the figure is weighted, because he can't really bounce. As we saw with Max Schreck, for some reason, because he's in those shoes, it just seems to really throw off the balance of the figure. He can't seem to get his feet flat to the surface and be able to hold his weight. And obviously, he's quite a top-heavy figure, so it has a tendency to want to make the figure fall forwards or backwards, and you're really going to need that display stand in order to really do anything with him, I think. In terms of articulation, he does have a swivel at the top of the neck, so he can move his head from side to side a little bit. There's ball joints in the shoulders, which will allow the arms to lift up and out, and there is a complementary bicep swivel, a double pin at the elbow, which is good, because I wasn't sure we'd get that, actually. And he does have a ball joint at the wrist there, so the hand will rotate all the way around and hinge forwards and backwards. There is, of course, a ball joint in the top of the waist there, what will allow him to move from side to side, lean left and right, and kind of bend forwards and backwards a little bit, although you might expect to get a bit more out of this than we actually are getting. He does have the standard hinge joints in the hips there, so legs will kick out to the side and they'll kind of go forwards and backwards a tiny smidge. There is a pin swivel, interestingly, at the lower leg, so it will swivel from side to side and it will hinge to about 45 degrees, and then there's a little bit of give in the ankle ball joint there, so the foot can kind of wobble forwards and backwards. There is toe articulation, I suppose, but there's not really a huge range of motion on this figure. In terms of accessories, he's pretty light, but he does come with his top hat and his umbrella, two essential elements to his costume, I suppose. And if we include the cloak in this, or his coat, then I think we've got a pretty compelling, pretty complete version of this character. But sadly, largely, that's all there is to this figure. And so if I'm going to give it a star rating, I have to kind of give him 3 stars, which is a bit underwhelming for such a major cinematic villain and such an important character in this particular wave. The presentation looks great. I'm actually really happy with how he looks. It just feels incredibly limited what you can actually do with him. Part of that is the articulation. It's kind of going to be the nature of the character because he's kind of oversized. He's also quite squat and small, so you can't really do too much, and I can't blame McFarlane for that. And I do think they've made a really good swing with this, particularly in the paint apps when it comes to the face and on the torso there. They're really good. Likewise, I really do like the cloth cloak or coat. I think this works really, really well and looks really effective like this. I wish they applied the same care when it came to the paint apps on the top hat and the umbrella, particularly the umbrella, because this just feels like a very matte plastic, and it's a shame that there's nothing running over this to just distinguish it and make it look a little bit more authentic and realistic. So it feels like they've missed an opportunity there, which, wouldn't have cost very much, and it might have just, elevated the presentation of this figure overall. So I don't know. I've got kind of mixed feelings about this figure. I'm kind of underwhelmed. Mattel did one a few years ago, and I'll put a link to that at the end of the video if you want to see how they compare, because I actually feel like this is quite similar. This is probably a step up, in all honesty, most notably because of the scale and the paint apps, but they're very, very similar in terms of the approach. So check it out and see which one is your personal preference. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please do consider giving the video a like. That kind of thing really does help the channel out, and it allows me to keep making more content. And if you're interested in seeing more content, remember to hit subscribe, as there'll be plenty more videos coming soon.